A disruptive innovation is an innovation that helps create a new market and value network, and eventually disrupts an existing market and value network, displacing an earlier technology. The term is used in business and technology literature to describe innovations that improve a product or service in ways that the market does not expect, typically first by designing for a different set of consumers in a new market and later by lowering prices in the existing market. In contrast to disruptive innovation, a sustaining innovation does not create new markets or value networks but rather only evolves existing ones with better value, allowing the firms within to compete against each other's sustaining improvements. Sustaining innovations may be either discontinuous or continuous. The term disruptive technology has been widely used as a synonym of disruptive innovation, but the latter is now preferred, because market disruption has been found to be a function usually not of technology itself but rather of its changing application. Sustaining innovations are typically innovations in technology, whereas disruptive innovations change entire markets. For example, the automobile was a revolutionary technological innovation, but it was not a disruptive innovation, because early automobiles were expensive luxury items that did not disrupt the market for horse-drawn vehicles. The market for transportation essentially remained intact until the debut of the lower-priced Ford Model T in 1908. The mass-produced automobile was a disruptive innovation, because it changed the transportation market. The automobile, by itself, was not. The current theoretical understanding of disruptive innovation is different from what might be expected by default, an idea that Clayton M. Christensen called the technology mudslide hypothesis. This is the simplistic idea that an established firm fails because it doesn't keep up technologically with other firms. In this hypothesis, firms are like climbers scrambling upward on crumbling footing, where it takes constant upward climbing effort just to stay still, and any break from the effort causes a rapid downhill slide. Christensen and colleagues have shown that this simplistic hypothesis is wrong. It doesn't model reality. What they have shown is that good firms are usually aware of the innovations, but their business environment does not allow them to pursue them when they first arise, because they are not profitable enough at first and because their development can take scarce resources away from that of sustaining innovations. In Christensen's terms, a firm's existing value networks place insufficient value on the disruptive innovation to allow its pursuit by that firm. Meanwhile, startup firms inhabit different value networks, at least until the day that their disruptive innovation is able to invade the older value network. At that time, the established firm in that network can at best only fend off the market share attack with a me-too entry, for which survival is the only reward. The work of Christensen and others during the 2000s has addressed the question of what firms can do to avoid displacement brought on by technological disruption. History and usage of the term disruptive technologies was coined by Clayton M. Christensen and introduced in his 1995 article Disruptive Technologies, Catching the Wave, which he co-wrote with Joseph Bauer. The article is aimed at managing executives who make the funding purchasing decisions in companies rather than the research community. He describes the term further in his book The Innovator's Dilemma. Innovator's Dilemma explored the cases of the disk drive industry and the excavating equipment industry. In his sequel with Michael E. Rayner, The Innovator's Solution, Christensen replaced the term disruptive technology with disruptive innovation because he recognized that few technologies are intrinsically disruptive or sustaining in character. Rather, it is the business model that the technology enables that creates the disruptive impact. However, Christensen's evolution from a technological focus to a business modeling focus is central to understanding the evolution of business at the market or industry level. Christensen and Mark W. Johnson, who co-founded the management consulting firm Innosight, described the dynamics of business model innovation in the 2008 Harvard Business Review article Reinventing Your Business Model. The concept of disruptive technology continues a long tradition of the identification of radical technical change in the study of innovation by economists, and the development of tools for its management at a firm or policy level. In the late 1990s, the automotive sector began to embrace a perspective of constructive disruptive technology by working with a consultant David E. O. unregistered trademark Ryan, whereby the use of current off-the-shelf technology was integrated with newer innovation to create what he called an unfair advantage. The process or technology change as a whole had to be constructive in improving the current method of manufacturing yet disruptively impact the whole of the business case model, resulting in a significant reduction of waste, energy, materials, labor or legacy costs to the user. In keeping with the insight that what matters economically is the business model, not the technological sophistication itself, Christensen's theory explains why many disruptive innovations are not advanced technologies, which the technology mudslide hypothesis would lead one to expect. Rather, they are often novel combinations of existing off-the-shelf components, applied cleverly to a small, fledgling value network. The theory, Christensen defines a disruptive innovation as a product or service designed for a new set of customers. Generally, disruptive innovations were technologically straightforward, consisting of off-the-shelf components put together in a product architecture that was often simpler than prior approaches. They offered less of what customers in established markets wanted and so could rarely be initially employed there. They offered a different package of attributes valued only in emerging markets remote from, and unimportant to, the mainstream. Christensen argues that disruptive innovations can hurt successful, well-managed companies that are responsive to their customers and have excellent research and development. These companies tend to ignore the markets most susceptible to disruptive innovations, because the markets have very tight profit margins and are too small to provide a good growth rate to an established firm. Thus disruptive technology provides an example of when the common business world advice to focus on the customer can sometimes be strategically counterproductive. While Christensen argued that disruptive innovations can hurt successful, well-managed companies, unregistered trademark Ryan countered that a constructive via integration of existing, new, and forward-thinking innovation could improve the economic benefits of these same well-managed companies, once decision-making management understood the systemic benefits as a whole. Christensen distinguishes between low-end disruption, which targets customers who do not need the full performance valued by customers at the high end of the market, and new market disruption, which targets customers who have needs that were previously unserved by existing incumbents. Low-end disruption occurs when the rate at which products improve exceeds the rate at which customers can adopt the new performance. Therefore, at some point the performance of the product overshoots the needs of certain customer segments. At this point, a disruptive technology may enter the market and provide a product which has lower performance than the incumbent but which exceeds the requirements of certain segments, thereby gaining a foothold in the market. In low-end disruption, the disruptor is focused initially on serving the least profitable customer, who is happy with a good enough product. This type of customer is not willing to pay premium for enhancements in product functionality. Once the disruptor has gained a foothold in this customer segment, it seeks to improve its profit margin. To get higher profit margins, the disruptor needs to enter the segment where the customer is willing to pay a little more for higher quality. To ensure this quality in its product, the disruptor needs to innovate. The incumbent will not do much to retain its share in a not-so-profitable segment, and will move up market and focus on its more attractive customers. After a number of such encounters, the incumbent is squeezed into smaller markets than it was previously serving. And then finally the disruptive technology meets the demands of the most profitable segment and drives the established company out of the market. New market disruption occurs when a product fits a new or emerging market segment that is not being served by existing incumbents in the industry. The extrapolation of the theory to all aspects of life has been challenged, as has the methodology of relying on selected case studies as the principal form of evidence. Jill Lepore points out that some companies identified by the theory as victims of disruption a decade or more ago, rather than being defunct, remain dominant in their industries today. Lepore questions whether the theory has been oversold and misapplied, as if it were able to explain everything in every sphere of life, including not just business but education and public institutions. Disruptive technology. In 2009, Mudslide described the high technology as disruptive technology and raised the question, what is being disrupted during this process? The answer, according to Mudslide, is the support network of high technology. For example, introducing electric car disrupts the support network for gasoline car. Such disruption is fully expected and therefore effectively resisted by support net owners. In the long run, high technology either bypasses, upgrades or replaces the outdated support network. Technology, being a form of social relationship, always evolves. No technology remains fixed. Technology starts, develops, persists, mutates, stagnates and declines just like living organisms. The evolutionary life cycle occurs in the use and development of any technology. A new high-technology core emerges and challenges existing technology support nets which are thus forced to co-evolve with it. New versions of the core are being designed and fitted into an increasingly appropriate TSN, with smaller and smaller high-technology effects. High technology becomes just regular technology, with more efficient versions fitting the same support net. Finally, even the efficiency gains diminish, emphasis shifts to product tertiary attributes and technology becomes TSN preserving appropriate technology. This technological equilibrium state becomes established and fixated, resisting to be interrupted by a technological mutation. A new high technology appears and the cycle is repeated. Regarding this evolving process of technology, Christensen said, "The technological changes that damage established companies are usually not radically new or difficult from a technological point of view. They do, however, have two important characteristics. First, they typically present a different package of performance attributes, ones that, at least at the outset, are not valued by existing customers. Second, the performance attributes that existing customers do value improve at such a rapid rate that the new technology can later invade those established markets." Joseph Bauer explained the process of how disruptive technology, through its requisite support net, dramatically transforms a certain industry. When the technology that has the potential for revolutionizing an industry emerges, established companies typically see it as unattractive, unregistered trademark S not something their mainstream customers want, and its projected profit margins are unregistered trademark T sufficient to cover big company cost structure. As a result, the new technology tends to get ignored in favor of hotter unregistered trademark S currently popular with the best customers. But then another company steps in to bring the innovation to a new market. Once the disruptive technology becomes established there, smaller-scale innovation rapidly raise the technology unregistered trademark S performance on attributes that mainstream customers unregistered trademark value. The automobile was high technology with respect to the horse carriage, it however evolved into technology and finally into appropriate technology with a stable, unchanging TSN. Main high technology advance in the offing as some form of electric car whether the energy source is the sun, hydrogen, water, air pressure or traditional charging outlet. Electric car preceded the gasoline automobile by many decades and now it returns to people's life to replace the traditional gasoline automobile. Mudslide described the above phenomenon. He also wrote that implementing high technology is often resisted. This resistance is well understood on the part of active participants in the requisite TSN. The electric car will be resisted by gas station operators in the same way automated teller machines were resisted by bank tellers and automobiles by horsewhip makers. Technology does not qualitatively restructure the TSN and therefore will not be resisted and never has been resisted. Middle management resists business process re-engineering because BPO represents a direct assault on the support net they thrive on. Teamwork and multifunctionality is resisted by those whose TSN provides the comfort of narrow specialization and command-driven work. High technology effects. High technology is a technology core that changes the very architecture of the components of the technology support net. High technology therefore transforms the qualitative nature of tasks of TSN and their relations, as well as their requisite physical, energy and information flows. It also affects the skills required, the roles played, the styles of management and coordination the organizational culture itself. This kind of technology core is different from regular technology core, which preserves the qualitative nature of flows and the structure of the support and only allows users to perform the same tasks in the same way, but faster, more reliably, in larger quantities, or more efficiently. It is also different from appropriate technology core, which preserves the TSN itself for the purpose of technology implementation and allows users to do the same thing in the same way at comparable levels of efficiency, instead of improving the efficiency of performance. Based on the framework, modern information and knowledge-based technologies currently tend to be high technologies with high technology effects. They integrate task, labor and knowledge, transcend classical separation of mental and manual work, enhance systems aspects, and promote self-reliance, self-service, innovation and creativity. In comparison, the A-Euro technologies, no matter how new, complex or advanced, are those which still require the dividing and splintering of task, labor and knowledge, increase specialization, promote division and dependency, sustain intermediaries and diminish initiative. However, not all modern technologies are high technologies. They have to be used as high technologies, function as such, and be embedded in their requisite TSNs. They have to empower the individual because only through the individual can they empower knowledge. Not all information technologies have integrative effects. Some information systems are still designed to improve the traditional hierarchy of command and thus preserve and entrench the existing TSN. The administrative model of management, for instance, further aggravates division of task and labor, further specializes knowledge, and separates management from workers and concentrates information and knowledge in centers. As knowledge surpasses capital, labor and raw materials as the dominant economic resource, technologies are also starting to reflect this shift. Technologies are rapidly shifting from centralized hierarchies to distributed networks. Nowadays knowledge is not residing in a supermind, superbook or superdatabase, but a complex relational pattern of networks brought forth to coordinate human action. Practical example of disruption: in practical world, the popularization of personal computers illustrates how the knowledge contributes to the ongoing technology innovation. The original centralized concept is a knowledge-defying idea of the computing prehistory, and its inadequacies and failures have become clearly apparent. The era of personal computing brought powerful computers on every desk €. This short and transitional period was necessary for getting used to the new computing environment, but was inadequate from the knowledge-producing vantage point. Adequate knowledge creation and management come mainly from networking and distributed computing, one person, many computers. Each persona unregistered trademark S computer must form an access to the entire computing landscape or ecology through the Internet of other computers, databases, mainframes, as well as production, distribution and retailing facilities, etc. For the first time our technology empowers individuals rather than external hierarchies. It transfers influence and power where it optimally belongs, at the loci of the useful knowledge. Even though hierarchies and bureaucracies do not innovate, free and empowered individuals do. Knowledge, innovation, spontaneity and self-reliance are becoming increasingly valued and promoted. Examples of disruptive innovations: see also, Blue Ocean Strategy, Creative Destruction, Killer Application, Leapfrogging, List of Emerging Technologies, Obsolescence, Paradigm Shift, Technology Strategy, Notes. References. Further reading: Dan Niels, Erwin. Disruptive Technology Reconsidered, A Critique and Research Agenda. Journal of Product Innovation Management 21, 246 €258 doi, 10.1111 per Joule 073782.2004.00076 exa, Dan Niels, Erwin. From the guest editor, Dialogue on the Effects of Disruptive Technology on Firms and Industries. Journal of Product Innovation Management 23, 2 €4 doi, 10.1111 per Joule 1540-5885.2005.00174 exa, external links, peer-reviewed chapter on disruptive innovation by Clayton Christensen with public commentaries by notable designers like Donald Norman, The Myth of Disruptive Technologies. Note that Dvorak's definition of disruptive technology describes the low-cost disruption model, above. He reveals the overuse of the term and shows how many disruptive technologies are not truly disruptive. The disruptive potential of game technologies, lessons learned from its impact on the military simulation industry, by Roger Smith in Research Technology Management, Disruptive Innovation Theory, Bibliography of Kristen Senior Unregistered Trademark S Theory of Disruptive Innovation as it relates to higher education, Disruptive Technology Portfolio by Information Week and Credit Suisse, 1, Diffusion of Innovations, Strategy and Innovations. The DSI Framework by Francisco Rodriguez Gomez. Academia.edu. Share Research, Creating the Future, Building Tomorrow. Unregistered Trademark S World.